Hello everybody and welcome to the Team Conti Sim Performance track guide for week 8. We are at Martinsville Speedway with the NASCAR NextGen car. I am Michael Conti and I'm here to take you for a quick run around Martinsville Speedway. Typically when we do these track guides I do what we consider a race stint for practice, which bigger tracks are 30 laps, Martinsville would probably be 40 or 50. I'm gonna shake it up a little bit this week because I think there's probably more value in breaking down laps a little bit more carefully versus just doing a full run inside the car at speed. So I'll probably do 10 or 15 laps here, talk along the way to the best of my ability while I fight for my life around this place, and then we'll go ahead and go outside the car and into the replay screen, spend a little bit more time there than we typically do. So number one, right off the bat, you can see that we have to shift at both ends of the track. Very unfortunate that we have to do that, but that is part of next-gen racing on short tracks, so we're in between third and fourth gear. There's a lot going on here in the braking zone, heavy straight line braking down to third gear, trying to wrap the curb fairly tight. Don't want to be right on it though, because then you end up pinching off your center and you compromise your exit, so give it a little bit of berth, but still don't want to be flying up the track by overdriving entry, locking up left fronts, etc. Like right there I locked up a little bit by having too much brake pressure over the transition from straightaway to the concrete in the corner. It's really going to be the biggest thing to look for this week is making as much time on entry as possible without locking up that left front tire. Typically people try to put a band-aid on a problem by changing master cylinders or dialing brake bias out, and while that's a good way to mitigate some of the problems, really it comes down to technique and approach here, and just understanding that you need to get most of your braking done early in the zone. So right here, heavy braking, and then by the time you make that transition from straightaway to corner, you've got to be getting off that brake, you got to be reducing your pressure. No matter what master cylinders, brake bias, front spring package, no matter what you do, you try to mitigate the problem. If your technique is wrong, your entry is going to be bad. If your entry is bad, as I always love to say, the rest of your corner is going to be bad, because entry is the most important part of the corner. 3 and 4 is the tighter end of the track, so we're rolling with a little bit less center roll speed right there versus 1 and 2. Couple mile-an-hour difference, not major, but still enough to make a difference. Couple different approaches we can take in 3 and 4. Right here I'm really wrapping this curb very tight, entering low, sliding up a bit in the center and exiting low. Can also exit a bit higher too, carry a little bit more speed, you just run the risk of sliding the right rear late exit. Same thing with 1 and 2. Some people are going to wrap the curb really tightly at both ends, some people are going to give it more room in the center and run more of a diamond, or use a wider exit like I did right there. It'll become a bit more apparent when I get outside of the car. From inside the car it all looks pretty similar, but it definitely feels different when you start doing those different techniques. Do a couple more laps here and then deep dive at both ends of the track. And I think you can probably now understand why I'm not going to bore you with a 40-lap race run at speed. I just don't think there's enough value in that. I'm also not going to show you a green flag pit entry because, well, I've been on the sim for 15 years. I don't think I've ever done a green flag pit cycle at Martinsville in any race or car. So I don't think we're going to have to go into that. What I will say though is when you inevitably get into a position where you've got a flurry of yellows at some point in your race, think about track position, think about 2 tires. It's very hard to pass here, and the longer you're in the pack and in the mess behind, the more likely it is that you're going to get caught up in it. So try to get up front and stay there. Don't be a glutton for punishment like myself and try to start in the back. Leave that to me. I like doing that. I understand the risks when I do that, but if you're somebody who is iRating focused, safety rating focused, or just results focused, trying to get the best result possible, the first step in doing so is to qualify up front. Go Go ahead and complete this lap right here. Been so busy I haven't even been able to touch the tracker to get it off best lap, but that's okay. It just goes to show how busy we're going to be this week at Martinsville. All right, so let's hop out of the car and deep dive a few laps on this run. How many laps was that? It was about 14 laps. So let's get out of the car here and I guess go to the best lap of the run. It was this 19:11. And we'll go ahead and get outside the car to really show where I'm braking, what my entry approach is like, what kind of angle am I taking? Is it a straighter entry? Is it a wider entry? And then how far off the curb am I? Going to take all of those things into consideration here. So let's slow it down. We'll start in 1 and 2 and really break it down for you guys. So going into turn 1, again, fresh tires. So I'm able to push at about the max limit that I'll have available to me for the entirety of the run. So I've got all the grip. I've got all the pace. This is, call it a 98% push. I'm not going right to the limit because that's silly, but getting close to it. So into 1 here, past the start finish line, and you can see the brake just start to light up as I reach the Geico logo, I guess, Geico logo, in the middle of this NASCAR Premier Partner signage into turn 1. So brake starts to light up immediately out of the gas. And I'm already starting my turn in off the wall here, several car lengths before the corner. Where a lot of people go wrong is they'll hold it out against this wall super late, and then kind of where these tire marks are down here, they'll try to cut it in all at once. So imagine if you do that, right? So you're going to be turning in much later, but you still have to get down to the bottom. So how are you going to turn in later and still get to the bottom? We have to do it in a much shorter span of time, which is going to require you to crank a lot more wheel into it. And as we know, or if we don't, as we should know, the more wheel you have in play when you're using a lot of brake pressure, which we are at Martinsville Speedway, the more likely it is that you'll lock up the lightest tire up front, which in that case is going to be the left front. So if we can minimize the amount of wheel we're using in the braking zone, we can maximize the amount of brake pressure we can use without getting to the limit of the front grip and potentially locking the tire. This is why when we go to all of our short tracks and road courses too, we always talk about straight line braking. And we also talk about threshold braking as well, which again, in simple terms, is braking to the limit of the front tire's grip by using max brake pressure in that point in time. So we're threshold braking and we're straight line braking. And you'll notice here as I go through the entry zone here, wheel is fairly straight, brake pressure is fairly constant. That blip of throttle is the downshift to third. 50 to 60% max brake pressure reduces quickly to about, I don't know, call that 20% by the time I get to the concrete. And again, you need to have your brake pressure reduced at this point because number one, it is a bit of a compression zone. The transition from pavement or asphalt to concrete, there's a bit of a drop. The front end dives, bounces a little bit. If you have too much brake and wheel combined at that point, you're going to lock up the fronts. And then also we're increasing wheel as we approach the official entry to turn 1, and we'll continue to increase wheel as I crest the apex here in just a bit. As I'm increasing wheel, I'm decreasing brake. As I'm getting closer to the corner, I'm decreasing brake. What you don't want to do is pump the brake. What I mean by that is you don't want to start with like 40% brake pressure, then spike to 60, and then down to 30, and then up to 40. You don't want to be inconsistent with that brake pressure through the entry zone because that's going to upset the attitude of the car. It's going to shift the balance front and back. And not only are you going to not be able to make optimal lap time, you're also going to put yourself at greater risk of locking tires. So if you haven't already figured out in the first 9 minutes of this video, locking tires this week at Martinsville is going to be the biggest thing that we have to look out for. And the way we mitigate that is a lot of straight line braking and reducing that pressure as we get into the corner. So going through the corner here, increasing wheel lock. You can see I'm increasing, and I am approaching 90 degrees of wheel at the apex. Lots and lots of wheel. And when I coach folks here, this is beside the braking issues, this is the number 2 problem, is not using enough wheel in the center of the corner. Okay, this is not an intermediate where we're using 15, 20, maybe 30 degrees of max wheel lock in the corner. We're not using small inputs here. We are cranking this wheel. We have to crank the wheel when we get to our minimum rolling speed, which is around the apex, which we're approaching right here, to make the corner, to have the front turn. Okay, if you've set up your entry properly, you haven't slid the tires, you aren't going too fast, if you've done everything right up to this point, you should be able to tug the wheel and use some additional lock as you approach the apex, and the car is going to respond in turn. That's how you're going to wrap the curb. Okay, what you don't want to do here is be tentative with the wheel and maybe only use 30 degrees or 40 degrees, because then what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to slow down way more than you really need to make the corner and wrap the curb. And in doing so, you're just going to hemorrhage lap time. Okay, so depending on your opinion, you may turn the wheel more or less than this, but with a moderate pinion called a 236 or 264, if you're approaching 90-degree wheel lock in the center of the corner, that's okay. That's expected. Okay, so getting close to the apex here, approaching max wheel lock, still trailing brake, mind you. Have to trail brake through the center to keep the nose pointing. All right, we don't want to free roll too soon. Now I'm finally free rolling. I'm reaching my max wheel angle here at the center of 1 and 2. And then you'll notice the wheel is going to start to decrease as the throttle increases. So now I've applied my initial throttle past center, and I'm at, call it 80-ish degrees of wheel, okay? I'm applying throttle. You're going to notice the throttle is going to work inversely to the wheel, meaning as the wheel returns to center, the throttle will increase. That is because if I use a lot of throttle when I've got a lot of wheel into it, I'm going to get tight initially, and then I'm going to snap loose on exit when I get off the banking and the car catches and sets on the right rear. So as I play this forward very slowly, I increase throttle, wheel is still pretty consistent at about 80-ish degrees, and now you can see the wheel is starting to come back, wheel's coming back, throttle starting to increase, wheel comes back a lot right there, throttle increases, almost to the straightaway, wheel is reducing, throttle is increasing, and by the time I get to the straightaway, I'm full throttle with maybe 20 to 30 degrees of wheel lock, okay? I would not be able to do this if I had any more wheel into it, because I would either shove tight or snap loose and crash. Okay, so we've got to get that wheel straightened out on exit as I am increasing my throttle pressure. Doing this properly at the beginning of the run is key, because if you mess this up early, you're going to cook those rear tires, and 30 or 40 laps in, you're going to be screaming, because it's going to be like driving on ice. Even though we don't have a lot of tire heat this week, and because of that, not a whole lot of tire wear, still managing the tires and executing properly is going to go a long way in making not only front end pace, but back of the run pace as well. Eventually you'll get a long run in one of your races at some point, and when you do, you want to make sure that you've got the best tires under you. Okay, so off of turn 2 right here, third gear, up to fourth fairly quickly, down the back, hugging the wall as tightly as possible. We start lifting right past the NASCAR sign. Lift past the NASCAR sign, quick lift out so I can get on the brakes. About 50-ish% of brake pressure, max brake pressure in a 3. There's your downshift there. Turning in, again, straight wheel, lots of pressure. Backing that brake off as I get to the concrete, instead of 50%, maybe 25, 30%. And this is the tighter end of the track, so I'm going to wrap this curb very tightly on entry. As I continue to increase wheel lock, I back out brake pressure. Wheel lock gets to about its max point right here, and you can really see how this corner cuts in a lot more abruptly than 1 and 2. This is why this is the sharper end of the speedway. This is why the speedway is a paperclip, because it's in the shape of a paperclip, and this is the tightest end of the paperclip. I give myself a little bit of berth of space as I get to the apex, and then like I mentioned when I was at speed, I have two options here. I can either overslow center, essentially, so I can turn back down and exit on the curb, or I can start to pick up throttle and continue away from the curb and track out a bit quicker. We'll see what I do here. So free rolling, max wheel input, start to apply throttle, plateau throttle at my max wheel input, and you can see I'm coming back down toward the curb here. So this is your diamond technique, entering on the curb, sliding up in the center, and exiting close to the curb again. increasing throttle pressure as I decrease wheel angle. Continue that, continue that, continue that. Really late to full throttle here, not in any rush to get to full throttle. Don't want to buzz the tires for nothing. And as I'm to call it the 7/8 mark of 3 and 4, maybe a bit past that, I'm finally at about a straight wheel and wide open throttle. So I'll go ahead and play the next lap at speed. It looks like another good lap, so let's see what happens here. Up to 4th gear, start braking at Geico. Down to 3rd, slide up a little bit in the center, and then you can see right there. See, I think this is where a lot of people go wrong too. Especially with this next gen car, you got to drive this thing very straight. It's not like a previous generation car or a truck or an Xfinity car where you've got that yaw available to you, where you can sit on the right rear and slip it out and make speed. You've got to drive this thing straight. So in keeping that in mind, I'm driving straight in. I'm letting the thing float up in the center. Even though I've got a whole lot of wheel here, I'm releasing the brake to just allow the thing to get away from the curb a little bit. That way on exit, right, get away from the curb, and then on exit, instead of trying to wrap this curb or even get back down to it, I'm just going to exit straight. I want to keep this thing as straight as possible. I don't want to slip the rear because I'm going to lose time. Straight to the bottom, slide up in the center, straight off. Keep the thing as straight as possible. A little lower right there, but still a very straight exit. I'm not trying to follow the curb too far around the corner, or else I'll sit it on the right rear and get loose. Tighter wrap in 3 and 4. That time, but still see that straight angle off of 4. Unwinding that wheel as quickly as possible so I can straighten the car out and hook the rears up. And you can see every lap is not the same. From inside the car, it probably looked the same. It feels mostly the same, but if you really look at this, especially when you compare the left side of the car versus the curb, you can see every lap's a bit different. And I'm just letting the car tell me what it wants. Depending on the amount of speed I carry into the corner, the amount of wheel angle I induce in center, it's going to put me in slightly different places. But depending on those places, I'm going to change my approach. So I'm up a little bit more right here. I'm going to slow down the center more to make sure I cut back down. If I wrap the center harder, I'm going to make sure that I start picking up speed quicker so I can get away from that curb. A little wider wrap there, straight exit off. Very smooth on the brake. You see max brake pressure initially and then off of it. There's no herky jerk. There's no light switch. Very, very smooth. That's how you make time here. Obviously, easier said than done, but I can't stress it enough. You have to be smooth, but we're also attacking here. I am pushing these braking zones because that's where the time is made up in this next-gen car. This is not a car where you're easy and hard out. You've got to make time on entry, because if you give up too much on entry, you don't have enough corner to be able to throttle up that much sooner to gain that time back down the straightaway. Playing it from inside the car for a couple laps again. Let's go back to these quicker laps at the beginning of this run. Cockpit, here we go. Off the wall, straight in, crank that wheel, do not be afraid to use wheel. And then back up off the corner into 4th, boom, 3rd, release brake. Actually a little bit of a left front lock up right there. I don't know if you can hear that through the video, but I can hear it on my end. Little left front lock, corrected it right there, backed up entry a little bit, nice tight wrap in 3 and 4, and straight up off the corner. I'll go ahead and stop the video right there because I think I've said about all that I can say for Martinsville. This is a track where there's minimal tire fall off and there's minimal change in handling throughout the run. There's going to be an overall loss of grip as you get 30, 40, 50 plus laps in. Your front's going to go away a little bit, so is your rear. But really, depending on how you drive the car, that is how the car is going to build. If you continuously lock the left front on entry by overdriving entry speed, using too much wheel, arcing out too much, if you continue to lock that left front, you're going to build tight, and you're going to be hurting long run. You're going to have no center roll speed. You're going to be slowing in the way. Conversely, if you nail entry but you throttle up too soon or try to wrap the curb too tight through the 7/8 and exit, you're going to kill the right rear and you're going to have no drive off and no chance of passing anybody, and it's going to be hard to hold those off behind you. So really this week it's all about maximizing your braking zones. Remember that straight line braking, and really focus on getting your braking as efficient as possible. And as you get to the center of the corner, like I said, crank the wheel. Do not be afraid to turn the wheel. The car will respond if you have done everything correctly to that point. And lastly, track position. Track position is key. So number one, qualify up front if you can. Number two, think about two tires. Uh, Tires don't wear a whole lot, so maybe you went 20, 30 laps and you're up front and you want to maintain that track position and you don't want to be in the back with the mess. Try two tires. I encourage you all to try that in test sessions before you get into the race, but still, two tires are viable, staying out is viable. Really focus on track position. Other than that, I've got nothing else. I hope that was helpful. I know this was a bit of a different format this week, but like I said, I think this is probably more beneficial for you all versus just watching me rip around here for 40 laps, seemingly doing the same thing every time. So, hope this helped. Hope you all enjoyed the format. Thank you as always for watching. I absolutely love Martinsville and I look forward to racing here this week. I hope to see you all on the track and I look forward to seeing you all once again next week for week 9. Take care, everybody. Good luck and may the wrecks not affect you this week.